What is going on, guys? It is Trifecta J here, back with the Fairfield Dynasty. Today we're going through the Season 1 off-season and then moving our way into Season 2. A quick look at our schedule. We went 2-10 on the season. Our first win came in Week 2, a close victory that we ended up winning with 21 seconds left against our rival UConn. It was a game where we ran the ball very well. Terrence Slade got the start in this game, played decent enough, and Dominic Frederick ran for 140 yards on 29 carries. He played very well. Carnell Blackshear with 10 tackles in that ball game. We followed that up by losing 4 straight games. One of those games was close against San Jose State. Following that up by picking up our second win and the final win of our season against South Alabama. We put up a bunch of points in that first half, really took our foot off the gas in that second half. Another game where Dominic Frederick played very well. The games where we did well, Frederick was running the ball very well. We then went on the road for 3 straight very tough games against top 20 teams in Wisconsin, Kentucky, and Georgia, and they got blown out in 2 disappointing games to end the season against Ohio and Nevada. This year we saw 2 quarterbacks play in Spencer Clay and Terrence Lake. I feel like Clay was the better quarterback passing, but Terrence Lake added a little bit more stuff on the ground. It ended up being somewhat even. The best player in the receiving corps is definitely TJ Cross, 22 yards per catch. He made a bunch of big plays down the field, but did have 9 drops, so he's got to do much better on that aspect in year 2. The defensive side of the ball was definitely led by Carnell Blackshear, 93 tackles. He played very well. We saw a number of players play. And then in the tackle for loss range, it was Morgan Shaw, Darius Brady, and Freddie Whitworth leading. All 3 of those are graduating, so I have to find a way to replace that production. And then also, we didn't get a ton of sacks on the season. Tremont Easley had 4. He was a good inside pass rusher, and then forced only 4 interceptions and only, I believe, 4 or 5 turnovers on the whole season. And look at the team statistics. We were one of the worst passing teams, along with one of the worst rushing teams. Just our offense was not very good. They only averaged 16.5 points per game. Really struggled in that aspect. They were the 4th least scoring offense in the country. Just could not finish a lot of those drives. We faced a lot of tough competition, so some of those numbers are skewed in that aspect. Our defense was very bad in year 1. We gave up the 3rd most yards in terms of total offense. We did decent enough against the passing game. Wasn't good, but it was not nearly as bad as our rush defense. We nearly gave up 2,700 yards on the ground, and then the points allowed, by far we gave up the most in the entire country. And look at some of the bowl games here. You can see Clemson won their bowl game. Didn't really have a great of a year. Then we move into some of the BCS bowls. You can see the Rose Bowl, the All-State Sugar Bowl, Cotton Bowl, not BCS Bowl, one of the top bowls, and then a national championship game. Arizona actually ends up going undefeated on the whole season and winning the national championship, led by Khalil Tate. Ohio State was undefeated entering the game, but Dwayne Haskins really struggled, throwing 3 interceptions. The final top 25 of the season, Kentucky, who we faced, ended up number 4 in the country. One of their best seasons of all time, if not their best season. Georgia was number 18, and then it was Ole Miss to round out the top 25. We then move on to the All-Americans. No one was an All-American on the national scale, but you can see some of those players here. Second team, KJ Costello wins. Otis Anderson proved himself to be one of the most explosive players in college football. And then just a wrap-up of the rest of the second team. And then we look at the freshman All-American. Trevor Lawrence was the quarterback. A number of talented players and the future of college football are on this list. Then we move on to the All-Independents. It's pretty much the All-Notre Dame team. A little hard with only 4 teams. It's a little funky with the players that get on here. But we do have Carnell Blackshear, which is great to see. And he was the only person who made first team. But then on the second team, Dominic Frederick makes it, along with TJ Cross for the offense. Our only 2 offensive players honored. And then on the defensive side of the ball, we do see Rashawn Gilchrist, Brooks Strickland, and CJ Sanders. One quick thing to look at is the MAC, the conference we will be joining next year. Miami of Ohio was the by far best team in the conference. Toledo won the West. We'll be joining the East and sort of reworking the whole structure. You'll see that a little bit later. Now we do move into the offseason. Darius Douglas's job is safe for now, but we need to see some improvement in this second season. One thing to note is both of our coordinators were fired. Dwight Freeney and Dan Orlovsky, replaced by Andy Richmond and Kevin Cosgrove. You can see Dwight Freeney picks up the DC job at San Jose State, and Dan Orlovsky decided to pursue other things. We pick up the New Mexico offensive coordinator. That's where Andy Richmond was, and our defensive coordinator came from New Mexico. So two guys from New Mexico, from the state at least. So sort of an interesting thing. You can see their attributes here: 9 level for Kevin Cosgrove and 3 for Andy Richmond. So our graduating players, you can see we lose a number of players on both sides of the ball and a number of starters. Only 2 or 3 of those weren't starters, so some definite production that we already have to replace. We move on to recruiting. We had 14 open spots and 12 players already committed, so there weren't a lot of players left. I didn't want to sign any more JUCOs. Those are those higher rated players, and we end up going after Chris Peters and Derek Edwards. Both of them will be moving positions. Edwards will be moving to defensive tackle. He's a guy who has some nice athleticism, but isn't a very good defensive tackle. And then Chris Peters, he's a little undersized for a linebacker, but that will be his home moving forward. He could be an interesting player there with a little bit of athleticism, and they both have some room to develop. We move on to signing day. We have 4 guys not going anywhere. Roddy Howard, who is a junior college guy, ends up at Marshall, and then Chris Peters and Derek Edwards both sign. And then you can see the rest of our class here, a number of junior college guys and a couple of nice underclassmen in Zach Bonner. John Roberts could be our starting nickel corner, and then a fullback. You can see the location of all of our signings. We have 5 from New Jersey, a lot of them in that upper northeast corridor. The only one who wasn't is JD Keys, who's from North Carolina. We end up with the 126th ranked class. That's to be expected because we only went after 14 players, along with the caliber of players that we're able to target right now is very low. The top 25 prospects in all of college football, the number 3 overall prospect ends up going to East Carolina, which is very interesting. We'll see how his career plays out. And then you can see the rest of them, a bunch of guys going to Clemson in the top things. But then the number 1 overall class is Texas, Michigan, Ohio State, Clemson, and Notre Dame. You can see the rest of these teams here and really where this top talent is going, and maybe the teams that can take that step to be a powerhouse. A look at some of the position changes. Dwayne Scott, who's a junior college tackle, he's going to be our starting left guard. And then, like I said, Chris Peters is going to be moved to linebacker. His overall gets a nice jump there, so that's good to see. Definitely was a smart decision. A look now at our progression. A bunch of good things here. We see +4 for all of our quarterbacks. Terrence Lake up to a 73. Nice bonuses for all of our passers and those ratings. We see +5 for Dominique Frederick. I'm expecting a big time senior year from him. His acceleration got a good boost and a little bit boost in speed. All of his run after contact type of things all went up. Aaron Montana will be our new fullback. And then at receiver, Tavarius Edwards, TJ Cross, and Antonio Lawson both got a nice little jump in speed. And then just a look at the rest of our roster. Got some good bonuses throughout. A +5 for Justin Dobbs. Cody Olsen gets a new +6. We have our new starting center, along with Marcus Hardy. The right tackle gets a +4. On the defense side of the ball, Jaron Gatewood, the new starting left end, gets a nice +5, which is great to see. He is a disruptive pass rusher and run blocker. And then at right end, Adonis Tillman gets a +5, and now will be competing with Quentin Arnold for that starting right end position. Defensive tackle could be a major worry, especially after this year with Tremont Easley graduating. He is a great interior rusher though, and will be a great player to have for this year. Tavarius Golden will replace Morgan Shaw. Parnell Blackshear gets a +5. I'm expecting a big senior year from him as well. He's a great tackler and should just be a very good player. DeMar Cartwright is back as our starting right outside linebacker. And then at corner, an interesting thing, Lewis Blackburn, who is our starting nickel, only goes up by +2. Rashard Scruggs, who is our starting nickel, gets that +5 and really evens up that competition. So that's one thing to keep an eye on moving forward. And then we move on to the back end, the safeties. Rashawn Gilchrist has one more season with us. He gets a little nice boost. He's gotten better at tackling and in coverage. Amari Burks is the future of that position, at least for year 3. Then a new strong safety is Dre Dixon. And then the special teams players both get a nice little boost. Only had to cut one player, and that would be a walk-on middle linebacker, Matt Hughes. Now we move forward and see the new structure of our conference. We'll be moving to the MAC. Army also joins in the eastern side, and then we moved one team to the west. I can't remember who it was at this moment. Now we move into the preseason for year 2. We'll get a look at some of the things in this part of the thing. So the schedule, we open with UConn at home, face 3 tough teams in Florida, Boston College, and Notre Dame, have a bye week, and then get into MAC play opening against Miami, Ohio, the #1 team in the MAC. And then we will end the season once again at home against Ohio. A look at the red shirts. All of the freshmen we signed are being redshirted. Hopefully they can develop moving forward. Derek Edwards is now a 43 at defensive tackle, and a couple of nice players in Matt Dunn and that tackle Luke Harris. Big fan of him. So quarterback's a little up in the air. We do have a number of players there. And just a look at our depth chart. No recruiting today. I'll probably do a whole episode dedicated to that once we have a better idea of what our board looks like, maybe around the week 3 or week 4 mark on the season. And it'll definitely be interesting to watch this team in this season too. We move into the back end. You can see John Roberts will be the starting nickel to open the season. Lewis Blackburn demoted to number 5 after that not great offseason. Now we move on to some practice. We'll get to see some of these new players in action and see if any of these players made an improvement. And I'll just be talking about year 2, the hopes for it, and the plans as well. So like I said, quarterback is sort of up in the air. We have 4 guys now. None of them will redshirt, with Travis Newby, a junior college sophomore. He's a pocket passer with a good arm, but does struggle with his accuracy. You could see him at one point. Then of course you have Terrence Lake and Spencer Clay, along with Monte Purcell could get some snaps. It'll just depend on the game and who's playing well. We'll get most of the snaps at quarterback. I think Terrence Lake may get the opening day start, and we'll see going from there. At running back, we have Dominique Frederick, of course. Like I said, expecting a big-time senior season from him. And then his backups do change. No more Dontarius Butler. So we have Marcus Macklin, Sean Allen, another junior college guy, and then Jelani Maddox. We'll see all of them pretty much rotate, but a lot of it probably will rely on Dominique Frederick. At receiver, we have those top 3 returning in: TJ Cross, Tavarius Edwards, and Antonio Lawson. Some new backups. We will see Rashad Conway, who redshirted last year. He's a good speedy slot guy. And then Darren Childress will probably be the number 4 guy. At tight end, Adrian Schaefer did graduate. You can see Sherman back there. He'll be one of the guys. We'll also see Nathan Reed. Depending on the situation, you'll see both of them play. Sherman Beck is more of the receiving guy, while Nathan Reed is a really good blocker. So it just depends on the situation. The offensive line sees 3 new starters. 2 of those are junior college guys. A heavy emphasis in this first recruiting class on junior college players to really try and get some immediate help in. And so you could see all those starters earlier. Then we move to the defense side of the ball. No more Darius Brady, who was a very good player for us. Jaron Gatewood, I have high hopes from him. He didn't play a whole ton last year, but he should be a good player on that strong side. Then on the weak side of the defensive line, we have Quentin Arnold and Adonis Tillman. Tillman's the much better pass rusher of the 2, so you'll definitely see those 2 probably split snaps 50-50, just depending on the situation. Quentin Arnold the better run defender, and Adonis Tillman the better pass rusher. On the inside of the defense, one thing to note is because of our new defense coordinator, we're going to be switching to his style, which is the 3-3-5, which does help our lack of defensive tackle talent. But the number 1 guy there will be Tremont Easley. Outside of that, there's Rayshawn Barkley, who's a big nose tackle, but not a whole lot of talent there. Then into the linebacking core, Morgan Shaw did move on, so we have Tavares Golden, and then DeMar Cartwright and Carnell Blackshear are both back. I really think that both of them could be very good and disruptive this year. Now into the back end of the secondary, all of our corners return. The only thing is John Roberts, another junior college guy, probably will be that starting nickel on opening day. We'll see how that moves forward. We do have Rashard Scruggs and Lewis Blackburn, who is a great tackler for us. Then for the safeties, Rashawn Gilchrist is back. You can see a nice play from John Roberts there, trying to test some of these corners and some of these deep passes. But like I was saying, Rashawn Gilchrist III is back for his senior season. He's going to be that high safety in the 3-3-5, and hopefully he can play well and maybe force some turnovers this year. Then the strong safety position, no more Brooks Strickland, but coming in is Dre Dixon. He was the backup last year. He's a hard hitter and will be more of an in-the-box type of guy and hopefully make some plays in the run game. But now that we've discussed the whole structure of the team, Season 2, the biggest hope is to just see some improvement. We need to win more than 2 games. Hopefully we can double that, maybe even get up to 5 wins. I don't see a bowl game for this team, just a relatively tough schedule and still not a whole ton of talent on the team, as there's a great scramble. You can see Monte Purcell. That's really what he's able to do. Most of his work does come with his legs. But the biggest thing is hopefully see improvement. A lot of those games last year, we were blown out. Hopefully we can stay in close games throughout the whole year, especially entering a new conference. We need to make a good first impression. But the real theme for Season 2, it's about improvement and staying competitive. Those are the two key things that we need to focus on. And hopefully we can do that and really rebound from that real tough end to Season 1. But I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please leave a like down below. Which of the new players are you most excited to see this year? And which of the current players that we saw last year do you think is going to really take that big step forward? But subscribe for more of the Fairfield Dynasty. I'm going to end off today with a little more practice footage. But I will see you for the season opener for Season 2 in the next few days, because I'm out. Black 8.